Hello. Welcome to the Forgotten Trimester YouTube channel, where we talk about all things postpartum and motherhood. On today's video, I am addressing the subject of postpartum rage. We'll talk about what it is and why some people feel it. I am your host, Dr. Megan Gray. I am a board-certified practicing OBGYN and mom of 2 littles. All right, so let's get started. So what exactly is postpartum rage? So anger and rage are emotions. They are on a spectrum. Anger is less intense of an emotion than rage. Rage is still an emotion. It's not a behavior. Anger and rage can incite behaviors over time, but they are originally emotions. It is thought that anger and rage are caused by perceived threats to our person or people that are surrounding us that we value, or out of frustration. So postpartum rage and postpartum anger are unique to the postpartum period. And we think that postpartum anger and rage, particularly postpartum rage, may be a sign of either postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. It does seem to go along with either one of those diagnoses. It is not very well documented and studied right now. And I think the reason is that, in over, centuries, pregnancy and postpartum has been kind of viewed as a happy time, a good time, motherly. When you think of mothers, they're kind and loving, and they have smiles on their faces. So I think we've been conditioned to believe that this postpartum period is supposed to be one of happiness and joy at all times. And the reality is that it's very difficult and tough and challenging, and depending on our circumstances and our environmental surroundings, it's even more challenging. So most women aren't going to show up to their doctor or midwife's office and say, I am really angry, because they don't want to be perceived as unmotherly, unhappy. Anger is kind of perceived as a negative emotion. And so we've been conditioned that that's not acceptable, especially in this pregnancy and postpartum time when we're supposed to be elated. So I think that because in the past, people haven't really complained or come to their doctor and presented with these concerns, we don't know much about it. We just haven't studied it because we didn't really know that it existed. However, as people become more willing to talk about their experiences, even the negative ones in the postpartum period, I think that the research is going to come. So here are some thoughts that I have on postpartum anger and rage. I think that a lot of it is a result of dysregulation. So in the postpartum period, we have sleep deprivation. No matter how hard we try to get sleep, there is some aspect of sleep deprivation, unless you're lucky and you're getting truly 8 hours of sleep every night, which very few people do, especially in those first weeks. You have a significant change in hormones. Estrogen and progesterone drop drastically within minutes of delivery of the placenta. So you go from a high estrogen progesterone state to a very low, almost menopausal-like estrogen progesterone state. That has to have an effect on how the brain functions. We just don't have the research there yet. And then we have this aspect of fear of the unknown, fear of lack of control, that plays into all of this. And when we are fearful for ourselves or our child, anger is one of the emotions that can bubble up. Then we have a lot of frustration. If you've never been through the postpartum period, frustration can be very, very normal. I personally dealt with a ton of frustration. I'm a type A person. I like control. I like to have to-do lists and check off boxes, and I like things to be organized and orderly, and that just all goes out of the window in those first couple of weeks in the postpartum period, which can lead to a lot of frustration. And frustration is one of those lead ups to anger. It's important to realize that we all have different triggers for anger and rage, okay? Not everyone will be triggered by the same thing. So even if I am triggered by one thing and my best friend never gets angry and is never triggered, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means my anger triggers are different than hers. And it's just something to recognize and understand about yourself. So what are some of the frustrations that can lead to anger and ultimately rage? We have unmet needs, right, in the postpartum period. So we have expectations of having additional help. We have expectations of how the baby is going to respond to us. We have expectations of the support our community is going to give us, or our job is going to give us, our partners are going to give us. And when those needs are unmet, that leads to frustration, and then that frustration can result in anger and rage. So frustration can happen when you continually do something, expecting some kind of response or reward for that action, and that reward or response does not occur. So think about this. You are struggling to breastfeed, right? It's tough. And every time you latch that baby, it is a struggle, and you're getting through it, right? You're getting through it. But it's just tough. It's emotionally draining. It's physically draining for you. And you never get a response from the baby. You never get a smile. You never get a, hey mom, high five, thanks for doing that. That was great. Good job. And no one around you is really supporting you. No one else is high-fiving you or giving you a pat on the back or a hit on the chin, go champ, you got this. So you're continually doing this difficult job, this activity, and getting absolutely no response or no reward. Not that you're necessarily expecting a true reward, but anytime you go through something difficult, you expect some kind of response from something around you, from your environment at least. And so it's very hard to deal with that lack of response, and that leads to frustration. And then if that activity is continuing to be difficult and you're still not getting a response, that can lead to anger and rage. So I've gotten a question in the past through a DM about why do I respond in anger, or why do I feel angry or rage towards people in my life in the postpartum period that I never felt that way before. And it's because of all these things. You have a dysregulation due to lack of sleep, hormonal changes, fear of the unknown. You have frustration due to the lack of unmet perceived needs. So it may be that your partner is trying to support you in the way your partner knows how, but in your mind, that is not helpful for you. So there's a mismatch of perceived support. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is just the reality of your expectations and the reality of what your partner is doing. And that's where discussion and communication comes in. There's also loss of boundaries. So if you are not careful, you will lose boundaries for yourself. You will lose boundaries within your family. You will lose boundaries within your partner or friendship groups. So it's very important that you recognize boundaries and you create healthy boundaries, and then protect those boundaries and express those boundaries to other people, because boundaries that are in your head are not true boundaries. They're just thoughts running around in your head. So that loss of boundary can lead to frustration and anger, and then rage. That sense of overwhelm, of having to do multiple tasks that you perceive are necessary without the support or help of others. That leads to frustration, anger, and rage. And then that perceived loss of control of the environment around you, right? If you're going from being an adult, managing your own environment, it's very easy a lot of times to manage that environment and control that environment. And then you have this tiny little human that comes into your world, and the environment changes, and the environment is very much wrapped up around that tiny little human, and that tiny little human is very unpredictable, and so it can feel like your environment is totally out of control, and that can also lead to frustration, anger, and then rage. So if you are feeling anger and rage, I ask you to please reach out to your physician or midwife. The most important thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you are not also having problems with depression or anxiety in the postpartum period. Like I said, there is some thought that postpartum rage is one of the signs or symptoms of postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. So those two things need to be further evaluated. If you are having symptoms of anger or rage, you need to have a professional evaluate you and make sure that you do not have an underlying postpartum depression or anxiety going on, okay? Because those are treatable. They are treatable issues in the postpartum period. It does not make you less of a mom. It doesn't make you a failure. It just means you have a medical condition called postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, just like people have medical conditions called diabetes and high blood pressure. So, number one takeaway is if you are having signs of postpartum anger or rage, please be evaluated. All right. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. As always, if you are enjoying this content, please, please, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I drop a new video every week. If you are not already following me on social media, check me out on Instagram at Forgotten Trimester. I am also on Facebook at Megan Gray MD. I have a great new website I just put up, and it's amazing. I love it, and it's pink. I love pink. That's my favorite color. But it has a lot of educational opportunities there. I'm blogging there. So it's a great resource and tool for postpartum and motherhood. All right. So until next week, be well, my friends. See you later.